You know how it is these days, you glance at the news and, well, there's always some huge story demanding your attention.
Hmm.
Right now, the Pentagon seems to be right in the middle of it all, and honestly, keeping track of every little twist and turn, it feels like a full-time job.
It really does. Things are moving fast.
Yeah. So that's where we come in, this deep dive. It's about cutting through all that noise and focusing on what looks like a really significant story unfolding.
Right.
We're talking about an investigation into alleged leaks of defense secrets, and it's already led to 3 top officials being placed on administrative leave.
And what's really striking, right from the start, is just the sheer amount of reporting on this already in such a short time.
Yeah.
We've pulled together information from, well, a whole range of sources. ABC News, Fox News, Politico, The Hill, Military.com, the Honolulu Star-Advertiser, even the Daily Mail.
Okay.
And we didn't stop there. We've also looked at transcripts from ABC News and 13 News Now videos, a Pentagon briefing document, and, this is key, that memo from March 21st, the one that kicked this whole thing off.
Exactly. So for everyone tuning in, our mission today is really to unpack all of this, figure out who the key players are, maybe explore the reasons behind this investigation, and just try to get a clearer sense of the bigger picture, you know? So with all this info, where do we even start to untangle this mess?
Well, I think the most logical place is what actually triggered it, what set off this investigation.
Right.
And the sources, they pretty consistently point to a directive that came out March 21st from the Pentagon's Chief of Staff, Joe Casper.
Joe Casper. Okay.
And this directive specifically called for an inquiry into leaks.
And this wasn't just out of the blue, was it? I mean, the memo itself apparently mentions, what was it, recent unauthorized disclosures.
Exactly. Recent unauthorized disclosures of national security information involving sensitive communications. That's the quote.
Sensitive communications. So what specific things might have, set this in motion? What were the leaks?
Well, it seems like, several things might have contributed. One that keeps popping up, ABC News, Fox News, Politico all mentioned, it was Elon Musk's visit to the Pentagon.
Ah, right.
Apparently, word of that visit leaked the night before this investigation was ordered. And it got, well, quite a stir, is how some reports put it.
Right, Elon Musk.
Yeah.
He heads up the Department of Government Efficiency now, so yeah, any visit he makes is going to be noteworthy.
Definitely.
But it wasn't just his visit raising eyebrows, was it? There was other stuff potentially getting out around then, too.
Precisely. Both ABC and Fox News reported on leaked info about maybe sending a second aircraft carrier to the Middle East or the Red Sea, that kind of detail.
Okay, carrier deployment, that's sensitive.
Very. And then also ABC News, Fox News, and Politico, again, they all mentioned reports about alleged Chinese war plans for the Panama Canal, or at least Pentagon discussions about military plans involving the canal.
Wow, Panama Canal plans.
Yeah. Now, just think about the potential impact of that kind of leak. Details about military planning, especially involving a strategic spot like the Panama Canal. I mean, the geopolitical ripples could be huge.
That definitely sounds like something they'd want kept under wraps.
But
and then there's the signal chat. That seems to be a really key piece here, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That story broke around March 24th. It involved a signal messaging chat among who? High-ranking former Trump administration national security officials.
Okay.
And they were reportedly talking about potential military action against Houthi militants in Yemen.
Right, the Houthis.
Now, what's really interesting here, and the Daily Mail Honolulu Star-Advertiser highlighted this, is that Dan Caldwell, one of the officials now on leave, he was apparently ID'd in that chat as Secretary Hegseth's point person for the National Security Council on these potential Yemen strikes.
So he was the go-to guy on that specific issue.
Seemingly so. And here's the really unusual twist. The editor of The Atlantic was somehow mistakenly added to this chat group.
Wait, what? The editor of The Atlantic?
Yep. Which is, of course, how the whole thing became public knowledge.
Wow, that's one way for sensitive info to get out. Just underscores how easily it can happen, I guess.
It really does. Human error,
And all this seems to have kind of culminated around a specific New York Times report.
That's right. Military.com and Fox News, among others. They point out the leak investigation was ordered just one day after a New York Times piece came out.
And what was that piece about?
It detailed a planned Pentagon briefing for Elon Musk about a hypothetical war with China.
Ah, connecting back to Musk again.
Exactly. Politico also ties that briefing to Musk's, quote, controversial visit. And Politico also mentioned something else, a pause in intel gathering for Ukraine.
Hmm.
That's apparently also part of what they're looking into, part of the leaks being scrutinized. So, yeah, it looks like a whole bunch of potentially damaging disclosures all happening around the same time.
Okay, so a number of potential leaks. Boom, boom, boom. Right in quick succession. Now, let's look at the immediate fallout. The suspensions.
Mm-hmm.
We know 3 top Pentagon officials are on administrative leave. Can you remind us who they are and what they did?
Sure. So the first 2 were put on leave on Tuesday, April 15th. That's Darren Selnick. He was Deputy Chief of Staff to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth.
Okay, Deputy Chief of Staff.
And Dan Caldwell. He was a senior advisor to Secretary Hegseth.
The same Caldwell from the Signal chat.
The very same. Then, the next day, Wednesday, April 16th, Colin Carroll was also placed on administrative leave. He was Chief of Staff for the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Stephen Feinberg.
Okay, so 3 senior people. And this term, administrative leave, that basically means they're sidelined while this investigation happens.
That's generally it, yeah. Temporarily removed from their duties pending the outcome of the investigation.
And the way it happened,
Yeah.
It sounds pretty traumatic. Sudden.
Indeed. Several sources, ABC News, Daily Mail, they specifically use the phrase escorted out of the building abruptly.
Wow. Escorted out.
Yeah, that detail, it really emphasizes how seriously the Pentagon is taking these potential security breaches.
No kidding.
And ABC News also reported that officials have confirmed, a connection between these individuals and unauthorized disclosures, but they haven't publicly spelled out exactly what each person is alleged to have done.
Right. So details are still scarce on that front. It paints a picture of, well, a very tense situation inside the Pentagon right now.
You'd have to assume so.
So what do we actually know about the investigation itself? How's it being run?
Well, our main clue is that initial directive, the memo from Joe Casper, March 21st.
Right.
As we said, it ordered the investigation into the leaks.
Right.
But interestingly, the memo also brought up the possibility of using polygraphs, lie detectors.
Polygraphs? Really?
Yeah. For anyone maybe not familiar, a polygraph measures things like heart rate, skin conductivity, trying to see if someone's being truthful.
Controversial things, polygraphs.
Very controversial. Their reliability is hotly debated. And it's really important to stress our sources haven't confirmed if they've actually used them yet in this case. It was just mentioned as a possibility in the memo.
Okay. But mentioning polygraphs suggests they're really trying to pinpoint who specifically was responsible for the leaks.
That's the logical takeaway, yeah. The stated goal is precisely that. Identify the source or sources.
And if they do...
Well, the memo was pretty clear on potential consequences. It said if a responsible party is identified, the info gets referred to the appropriate criminal law enforcement entity.
Right.
For possible prosecution.
Okay, so potential criminal charges down the line, that's serious.
Very serious.
And we still don't know for sure if the actual leaked information was classified, do we?
That's a really critical point. None of the sources we've looked at explicitly say whether the info had a classified stamp on it.
And that would make a huge difference legally, obviously.
Absolutely, if charges were ever filed.
Yeah.
And, Louis Martinez over at ABC News, he reported there's just a lot of confusion and, frankly, rumors swirling inside the Pentagon about what's going on.
Yeah, I bet.
People wondering if more personnel changes are coming. Though, again, those are just unconfirmed rumors for now.
And adding to that uncertainty, ABC also reported Secretary Hegseth himself isn't talking. Declined to answer reporters' questions about the suspensions.
Right. Staying tight-lipped.
It definitely sounds like a situation where solid information is hard to come by, which just fuels more speculation, doesn't it?
Exactly. Creates a vacuum.
Okay. Let's maybe zoom out a bit, put this into some broader context. What else is important to understand here? Why this might be happening now? What it could all signify?
Well, I think the Trump administration's overall stance on leaks is pretty crucial context.
Okay.
ABC News, the Daily Mail, Honolulu Star-Advertiser, they all point out the administration has been very vocal, consistently, about its commitment to rooting out leaks, especially in the Defense Department, but really across government.
Right, that's been a theme.
So that established position, it likely plays into why they're treating these potential disclosures so seriously.
Makes sense. Zero tolerance approach, maybe. And what about the people involved, the ones suspended? Do their backgrounds tell us anything more?
They do, actually. It's quite interesting. Several sources, Daily Mail, Fox News, Military.com, Politico, they really emphasize the long-standing ties between Darren Selnick and Dan Caldwell and Secretary Hegseth.
How so?
Well, all 3 of them worked together previously at Concerned Veterans for America.
Ah, okay. Pre-Pentagon connection.
Yeah. And military.com described Selnick and Caldwell as trusted advisors, close to Hegseth. So they were given major roles once the Trump administration returned to office.
So very much insiders.
Apparently so.
Wow.
One official, speaking anonymously to military.com, even described Caldwell as being like a family member to Hegseth, just to give a sense of how close that relationship might be.
Wow. Like family.
Mm-hmm.
That definitely suggests a deep connection. It raises questions about internal dynamics, maybe loyalties too.
It certainly could.
Okay, so Selnick and Caldwell are longtime Hegseth associates. What about Colin Carroll, the third official? Similar story.
Not quite the same, no. His background, according to military.com and Politico, includes working for a defense contractor and Ural Industries.
Okay.
And significantly, he also worked at the Pentagon's Joint Artificial Intelligence Center, the JIC. But that was during the Biden administration.
Ah, interesting.
And Politico reported he was actually fired from that job. Allegations of creating a hostile work environment.
Oof. Okay.
So his recent history within the Pentagon is, let's say, more complex and perhaps controversial, different from the long-standing ties Selnick and Caldwell have with Hegseth.
Interesting distinction. So you've got two guys with deep roots with the secretary and one with a more recent, maybe rockier path inside the building. And it sounds like these suspensions are already causing political waves.
Oh, definitely. Politico reports this whole situation has added fuel to Democrats' calls for Hegseth to resign.
Not surprising, I suppose.
Yeah, this comes after that earlier controversy around the signal chat leak we talked about, the Yemen strikes discussion.
Right.
Representative Daniel Goldman, quoted by Politico, called this the second major breach under Hegseth. Went so far as to say Hegseth is a national security threat.
Strong words.
Very strong. And the Daily Mail also reminded readers that in that earlier signal chat, Hegseth himself had specifically pointed to Caldwell as the main staff contact for the NSC on that Yemen issue, which, again, just highlights their close working relationship on really sensitive stuff.
Okay, so it's this really complex web, isn't it? You've got the potential leaks, Musk, China, Middle East, Yemen, Ukraine acting as triggers.
Mm-hmm.
Then these swift suspensions of 3 officials, 2 close to Hegseth, 1 less so. An ongoing investigation, maybe using polygraphs, maybe leading to criminal charges.
Right.
And already significant political blowback aimed at the secretary himself.
Precisely. You've summarized it well. It's multifaceted, lots of moving parts.
Well, let's try and bring it all together then. For you, our listener, what are the absolute key takeaways from this deep dive into all these sources?
I think the core thing is this. 3 high-ranking Pentagon officials are suspended. It's part of an investigation into alleged leaks.
Okay.
And this investigation seems to have been sparked by a whole series of potential unauthorized disclosures, covering a really wide range of sensitive topics: Elon Musk's visit, supposed Chinese military plans, stuff about the Middle East, Yemen, even Ukraine intelligence.
Quite a list.
It is. And the investigation is still ongoing.
Right.
So there are still many unanswered questions about, the specifics of the leaks and exactly how each of these individuals might have been involved, or if they were.
Right. Lots we still don't know. And beyond just the facts, what makes this particular story so interesting or noteworthy? Why should people be paying attention?
Well, I think several things stand out. First, you've got this intersection of critical national security issues butting up against the world of political appointees and the potential for trust to break down right at the top of the Pentagon. That's always significant.
Yeah.
Then there's that, frankly, bizarre detail about the signal chat. Accidentally, including the editor of The Atlantic, it just shows the human side, right? How sensitive info can sometimes spill out in really unexpected ways.
Definitely memorable.
And finally, those close long-term relationships. Between Secretary Hegseth and 2 of the suspended guys, Selnick and Caldwell, that adds a whole other layer of complexity, maybe even palace intrigue, to how this might all play out.
Absolutely. It really reminds you that these big government stories, they're ultimately about people, their relationships, their histories. Okay. So as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe here's something to chew on. In this age where information flies around instantly, how do we find that balance between, the need for government transparency, which is vital, and the absolute necessity of protecting sensitive national security secrets? It's a tough line to walk. And what are the bigger consequences when investigations like this happen? For public trust in government, for how we all understand these really complex defense issues?
Yeah, big questions, no easy answers.
Definitely not. It's certainly a lot to think about. Thanks for exploring this with us today.